All right, folks, we're going to wrap this up here. 45, 45, 90 triangles. Here's some examples on how to find missing side lengths of 45, 45, 90 triangles when you're given just one side length. So in this case here, I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. It's pretty clear because we have two 45-degree angles. Therefore, this one has to be 90 because the angles in a triangle add up to 180. And I have a side length here. This is 5. This side is a leg of the right triangle. It's not the hypotenuse because this is the hypotenuse. And since this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, it's also an isosceles triangle. So this side, which is x, has to be the same as this side, which is x, because it's an isosceles triangle. So if this side is 5, this side over here has to be 5 too. The hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 triangle is the length of one of the legs. Which leg? Doesn't matter because they're the same. Times the square root of 2. So the length of the hypotenuse is the length of one of the legs times the square root of 2. So we're just going to write that out. 5 times the square root of 2, and we're going to leave it. Square root of 2 is an irrational number. Not going to simplify that. We can't simplify it at all. So this length right here is 5 times the square root of 2. And we found the missing values of the side lengths of a 45 and 45, 90 triangle given just one side length. Another example here. Now I have the square root of 18. The square root of 18 is the length of one of the legs. So since I know the length of one of the legs, I automatically know the length of another leg. And then the length of the hypotenuse is the length of one of the legs times the square root of 2. So I'm going to write this out. Square root of 18 times the square root of 2. Square root of 18 comes from the length of one of the legs. The square root of 2 comes from the amount times longer than it is of one of the legs. That didn't sound confusing at all. The square root of 2 comes from the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times longer than one of the legs. So this looks like a mess and might look a little intimidating, but this, the square root of 18 times the square root of 2 is actually equivalent to the square root of 36, because 18 times 2 is 36. We did some investigations in algebra regarding that. These two multiplied by each other is the same as the square root of 36. And the square root of 36, oh, we know that one. Square root of 36 is 6. So therefore, the hypotenuse in this instance is just 6. And one more here. We have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. 45, 45, 90. The hypotenuse is 14, and we have to find the two missing side lengths here, or the legs. We know that 14, if that's the hypotenuse, that has to be equal to x times the square root of 2. 14 is equal to the length of one of the legs, because that's x, times the square root of 2. So we have to solve for x. So let's do some algebra here. Want to get rid of that square root. Get rid of that square root, you're going to square it. Square both sides. 14 squared equals x times the square root of 2 squared. This can be simplified to 196. 196 comes from 14 squared. This equals x squared. This x squared right here comes from x squared. And the square root of 2 squared comes from right here, the square root of 2 squared. Notice I am putting the exponent on both of these factors inside the parentheses. So I have this. When I see this, looks like a mess right here, square root of 2 squared, but the square root of 2 squared is just 2. So that's where this 2 comes from. Square root of 2 squared is just 2. And now I can solve for x. Divide both sides by 2, get 98. From 96, 196 divided by 2, that equals x squared. If I want to find out what x is, I take the square root of both sides, and I get the square root of 98. So x is the square root of 98. That's the length of one of the legs. Oops, and it's not on there. I don't know what happened there. So the square root of 98 is the length of this leg, and that's not coming up right now, and I apologize for that. So this leg is the square root of 98, and then this leg is also the square root of 98 because the two legs in a 45, 45, 90 triangle are the same.